Okay. We have discussed about applications of financial analytics. And after this, we have spoken about something related to investment management. There we spoke about risk return trade-off. We understood how to calculate expected return, and we also understood on how to calculate risk, how to calculate expected return and how to calculate risk. These aspects also we have very much discussed. Then we discussed a scenario, okay, wherein we spoke about okay. So we spoke about a scenario where what if we have one risk-free asset and one risky asset? If we want to completely invest in risk-free or completely invest in risky, that means take your complete money, either invest that complete money in risk-free or invest that complete money in risky. Then how much, how happy would a person be? For that, we looked at utility function. Utility function was given as expected return minus half a sigma square. Expected return minus half a sigma square, where a is called as risk aversion coefficient. A is risk aversion coefficient. And expected return is the money that you get. Sigma is the risk. Depending on this A, the conclusion will be on whether investing completely in risk-free asset is a good idea or investing completely in risky asset is a good idea. Which one is a good idea completely depends on this utility function. But then we also understood that what if someone does not want to invest completely in risk-free or completely in risky? Instead, they want to invest in some proportion. Some proportion in the sense, maybe they want to invest some percentage in risk-free and some percentage in risky. Like say 60-40. Say they want to invest 60% in risk-free and 40% in risky. Or they want to invest in the ratio of 70-30. 70% in risk-free, 30% in risky. Or say they want to invest in the ratio of 80-20. 80% in risk-free, 20% in risky, or whatever be the proportion. Then, how do we first of all decide in what proportion I need to invest? What is the amount of money that I need to invest in this? What is the amount of money that I need to invest in this? And for that, we have taken one case wherein what if someone wants to invest in the ratio of 60-40? Okay. And we evaluated 3 different scenarios. One is completely if I invest in risk-free, what is the utility going to be? Completely if we invest in risky, what is the utility going to be? If we invest in the ratio of 60-40, then what is the utility going to be? And for that, we also came up with the formula, expected return risk. Once, only if you have expected return and risk, can you calculate utility, because that is expected return minus half A sigma square. Okay. And A, assume that it is 3. Assume it is 3, and then we calculate it. We proceeded further. And we figured out that out of these 3, 60-40 ratio is the best ratio. But what if we have some other ratio, maybe 70-30, 30-70, 10-90, whatever, some other ratio, which gives you even better result. To understand that, we have this expected return formula. And also we have risk formula, which is equal to W sigma. So this expected return is equal to RF, risk-free, plus W into this. When you rewrite it by substituting W value as sigma P by sigma, you get this formula. And we understood that this is equivalent to Y is equal to C plus Mx. This is equivalent to this kind of formula, Y is equal to C plus Mx, where this is your M. M is called as slope. This is like equation of line, and slope of this line, on how steep it is or how flat it is given using this formula. And this equation of line is CAL, capital allocation line. And this is a slope M. This slope is called as reward to risk ratio. And this is also called as a Sharpe ratio. And friends, you will not be given any PPTs for this. This is just a value added session. Videos will be on the YouTube. You can watch it. So this is called as Sharpe ratio. However, once again, I need to say that next 4 months, we are planning to conduct these kind of sessions on 56 different domains. Suppose that for the next 4 months, we'll once again redo the same thing, but then it will be for more number of hours. Again, we are going to redo it again. It will be for more number of hours. That is when we want to ensure that we supply all the training materials, etc., to the participants. And that is where we stand at this point of time. So let me put it in the slide mode. Why is it not going into slide mode? So say you have your expected return of the portfolio and risk of the portfolio. And we also have capital allocation line. This capital allocation line is going to have your risk-free and completely risky. We discussed this already. That if at all you want to invest in completely risk-free asset, say that has a return of 5%. It doesn't have any risk 0, return is 5%. And you have another scenario where a return is 22%, risk was 34.29%. And we discussed that 50% risk-free, 50% risky would be here. 75% risk-free and 25% risky would be here. Here you'll have 75% risky and 25% risk-free, so on and so forth. So this line typically contains combinations of all risky and risk-free assets. It contains combinations of all risky and risk-free assets. And then I want to explain you another concept. That is same. Let's take expected return on y-axis, and let us take risk on x-axis. Suppose this is your capital allocation line. If you are here, it is completely risk-free. And if you're here, it is completely risky. Okay, now from here until here, 100% risky. This zone is called as lending zone. And from here until here, it is called as borrowing zone. Hey, what is this lending business and borrowing business? Can you explain me in a better manner? Sure, we shall. I will go here and explain. Suppose you have a person whose name is Lee. And Lee wants an expected return of 15%. Lee's expectation is that he wants 15% return on investment. And already we have a formula. Expected return is equal to W into risky asset. Maybe if it's risky asset, so let me say asset 1 plus 1 minus W into, let me put it this way, W into expected return of risky asset plus 1 minus W into risk-free asset. So this is 15%. That is what this guy is expecting. W into expected return of risky assets is 24% plus 1 minus W into risk-free asset is 5%. When you solve this, you get W equal to 58.82%. So if Lee starts with $100, then Lee wants to invest, since W equal to this, Lee wants to invest $58.82 in a risky asset. And 1 minus this, or 100% minus 58.82% would give you 41.18%. So these many dollars, Lee wants to invest in T-bill. That means lending to the government. If you invest in risk-free asset, that means it's a government bond or T-bill usually. So $41.18, you're investing in risk-free asset. That is, you're lending to the government. And you also have this portfolio standard deviation, right? Basically, amount of risk that is involved, which is 20.17. Risk on the portfolio is equal to W into sigma. So W into risk of the risky asset, because risk-free asset doesn't have any risk, right? So this is the formula. This was a formula. If you have one risky asset, one risk-free asset, This is a formula for expected return. This is a formula for risk. Risk, return. This is also return. Risk return is what we are looking at. Okay. Now, suppose you have another person called Brittany, and she's expecting a return of 30%. Then if we use the same formula, this formula, and try to solve it, you get W into 22 plus 1 minus W into 5, which is equal to 30. And then you get W equal to 147.06%. That is, if Brittany starts with $100 of investment, you can only invest $100. But how can you invest $147? That means $47.06 extra is what you need. Because Brittany's expectations are high. Brittany wants more money, more returns, meaning you have to invest more. Simple. So say Brittany borrows the money at a risk-free rate. Usually what happens, say you have Reserve Bank of India that is going to lend loans to the banks. Usually banks are lending loans to, RBI is lending banks loans at 5%. And what will banks do? They will lend loans to you, to the people. And they lend the loan at 8%, 10%, 12%, whatever, different percentages. Why do the banks charge you more? Because banks have to operate, right? They also need money to operate their business. So they take the additional percentage from you, and that additional percentage is profit to the bank. Not profit, it's a revenue to the bank. With that additional 3%, they are going to pay the salaries, run their operations, rent, so on and so forth. If they charge 8%, 5% they pay to the RBI, another 3% they keep it for their operations. But assume for now that Brittany is borrowing 47.06 at risk-free rate, meaning at 5%. Usually it won't be at 5%. But for our understanding here, let us say that they are borrowing money at 5%. And they invest the sum, which is 147.06 in the risky asset. Say that investing the money in the risky asset. This person is investing in risky asset. Now the risk is same formula. W into this. W is so much, 1.4706 into the sigma value, you get 50.40%. So if you observe here, one person is lending to the government. One person is borrowing at the same rate. If one person is lending, another person has to borrow. Simple. So if you have the expected return and risk, expected return on y-axis, risk on x-axis, you have that. Then this 5 is risk-free. Okay. Somewhere here, you'll have completely risky. So from here until here, you call this as lending. Okay, because we have this scenario where you get 22% return for 34.29% risk. So until here, wherever you invest, it is like lending to the government. Only once it crosses 100%, meaning if you want to invest more than 100%, you need to borrow from somewhere. So this until throughout, to whatever extent it goes, this is all borrowing. If you want 147%, if that's the money that you need to invest. And if you have only 100%, then you borrow remaining 47.06. Okay, so this is what happens. And then investing in the market with the borrowed money, you borrow the money, and if you invest, it is called as margin transaction. Margin transaction means you are investing the money with the borrowed money. In securities market, in stock market, we can do it, but it is double risky. Because if the market goes down, you don't just lose your money, you'll also lose the borrowed money. You lose both. Okay, so it is very, very risky. But then, where do you want to lie on this line is up to you. Why? Because on this line, utility is the same. Happiness is the same on this line, capital allocation line. Okay. Happiness or utility is the same. Whether you want to be here or here doesn't matter, it will be the same. Whether you want to be here, that is, whether you want to invest 58% of the money that you have in a risk-free asset or in a risky asset and remaining money in the risk-free, or whether you want to borrow the money and then invest, it's completely up to you. Whether you want to invest, since you're borrowing the money, there's no question about investing in government bonds. You're borrowing money, so obviously it has to be in risky assets. So whether you want to be Lee or Brittany completely depends on your risk aversion factor. Okay. Now, we have to solve one more thing. How do I decide, okay, on where does this person with A equal to 3 wants to lie? Or we will talk about indifference curves now and try to understand a few additional things. Before I proceed further, here is a math equation. Okay, mathematical equation. And people who are not aware of optimization, don't you worry too much. I'm going to at a high level explain you. If you understand, well and good, the calculus part, etc. If you don't understand also, you might want to just ignore that. Okay, don't worry too much, is what my request is. So here, we can calculate the utility function. You already know what is a utility function. Let me write it down. Utility function is expected return on the portfolio minus half a sigma square risk on the portfolio. Okay. And expected return is given as how much you want to invest in your risky asset plus how much you want to invest in your risk-free asset. and that is expected risk. And this sigma p square is given as W square sigma square. Now say you want to maximize this utility function. You want to maximize the happiness. But how will your happiness be determined? Based on how much you are investing in risky asset and how much you want to invest in risk-free asset. And this part we have rewritten last time as W expected return plus 1 into RF is RF minus W into RF is minus W into RF. This can be rewritten as RF plus W into expected return minus risk-free asset. So if you want to maximize this utility function by changing the weights, then you write it as, wherever you have ERP, you're writing this part. RF, same thing, plus W into expected return. Sorry, you want to maximize this utility function subject to these things. You want to maximize this utility function, this function, subject to these equations. Expected return will be so much. Okay. And sigma p square equal to W square into sigma. So here, when you say dou u by dou W, dou u by dou W, that means if you try to differentiate this using weight, I'm going to change the weight and see how is a change of weight going to change the happiness or utility. This is what we are interested in. I'm going to change the weight and see how much is each time I change weight, by how much is it going to change the utility. So in this scenario, derivative of this utility function or derivative of this, okay, or my bad, sorry, derivative of this function, wherein this is so much, sigma p is so much. If you change the derivative, or if you change the weight and then see by what rate utility is changing, then you write it as this ERP has this, right? So let's find the derivative of this. Derivative of RF with respect to W will be 0. Why? Because RF is considered to be constant. Constant in the sense 5%. Derivative of any constant is equal to 0. Derivative of this with respect to W you are doing, right? So this W will go away. You will be left with only this. Expected return minus RF. Okay. Minus half A this. So half A, this is nothing but W square sigma square. And W square derivative is 2W, sigma square will be answers. You equate it to 0. And then solve it, which implies this is anyway 0. This actually, if you take this on the other side, ER minus RF is equal to this one, half A, this 2 and this 2 gets cancelled, right? So that is why I was telling that this 1 by 2 in the formula here is just for some math stability. So this can be written as A W sigma square. This implies that W is equal to ER minus RF divided by A sigma square. Okay, this is what we got. This is a math way of getting your W value. That is how much money you want to invest. What is the most optimal way? Now, if I say for a guy with A equal to 3, what is the amount that this guy has to invest in risky asset? And how much should this guy with A equal to 3 invest in risk-free asset? If that's what you're interested in, then expected return of a risky asset is 22% minus. Risk-free would give you a return of 5%. A is given as 3 into the risk on risky asset was 34.29%, which is written as 0.3429. And square it. When you solve it, you get some number like 0.48 something. Now, what does this mean? For a guy with A equal to 3, this person has to invest 48% of the money he or she has on risky asset. Another 50% of the money on risk-free asset. Okay. That's a math way of deriving. This is exactly what we have derived. And this is called as maximization problem. That means as and how you keep increasing the amount of weight that you invest in risky assets, your utility or happiness will keep on increasing as and how you keep on increasing weight until a certain point. After that, the additional money that you spend on risky assets is going to actually reduce your happiness, because you'll be like, oh my God, I invested too much of money in the risky asset. What if the market goes down? You get into all that zone. Though investing more money in risky assets might give you more return, but overall happiness will be reduced. Mathematically also that has been proven, and here is the answer for that. As and how you keep increasing the amount of money that you invest in the risky assets, your happiness will increase up to a point and then it starts decreasing. Okay. So as you start from a risk-free asset, and as and how you keep adding the risky assets, the reward keeps on increasing, the utility up to a certain point. And after that point, it will start reducing, decreasing. Next. So back to our capital allocation line example, right? Here, if this is a capital allocation line, and since Lee was was investing in the government bonds, Lee is considered to be not so greedy about getting money. So you have Lee's curve like this. I would not say not so greedy. I would say probably this guy is risk averse. Okay, risk averse. Doesn't want to take risk, hence is investing in risk-free asset, which is the government bond. More amount is being invested by Lee in government bond. If you look at Britney, what is happening in Britney's case? Britney is investing in risky assets. So this person is more risk-taking, risk-preferred. So steeper the curve, more is the risk aversion. Okay, and flatter the curve, less is a risk aversion. So using capital allocation lines and by using indifference curves, we could make a lot of statements. And how much does a specific person want to invest in any stock, risky or risk-free, etc., is given using this. And the moment you know the risk aversion coefficient value, which is difficult to obtain, but we'll discuss on how to obtain that. Then we'll come to know how much money you want to invest in risky versus how much money you want to invest in risk-free. Now, so we just completed analysis of what if I have one risk-free and one risky asset. Okay. And what if you have more than one risky asset in which you want to invest? There are a huge number of risky assets available in the market. There are thousands of listings of various companies. You have bonds, you have foreign exchange, you have commodities, you have foreign stock, you have private equity, you have precious metal, gold, etc. There are many things. So when I talk about only risky assets, it is a portfolio of many risky assets. It is actually a portfolio of many risky assets. Now we solved only this scenario, one risk-free and one risky. Okay, this is what we could solve. So what we also now want to do is, what if I have n risky assets? Forget about risk-free for now. What if I have n risky assets? Then how do I invest? How do I build my portfolio? Once I can do this, I would then bring in, I'm going to, in some way, mash down all the n risky assets into one risky asset. If I can do that successfully, then I can bring in my risk-free friend and then we can combine these, right? So now our goal is to see how do we bring down all the n risky assets into one risky portfolio. Okay, one risky portfolio, n risky assets to one risky portfolio. That is what we want to do now. So discard it because that's all we had for this. So now let me quickly get into the next presentation, wherein we will talk about more than two risky assets. And then what happens? So first of all, we already discussed about n risky asset, one risky asset and one risk-free asset. Now we are taking n risky assets and then we are now going to deal with that. Before I get to this, I want a probably white screen and then I want to write down a few things. Let's start with two risky assets, then we'll increase the count. If you have two risky assets, then you need to invest some amount in risk asset one, some amount in risky asset two. We have risky asset one and risky asset two. Here you have expected return of one and here you have expected return of two. And then here you have risk of one and risk of two. And sigma 1, 2 is a covariance between these two. Expected return on the portfolio, if you have two risky assets, is given as W1 into expected return on 1 plus W2 into expected return on 2. And variance of the portfolio is given as W1 square sigma 1 square plus W2 square sigma 2 square plus 2 times of W1 W2 into sigma 1 2. This is when you have two risky assets. Instead of 2, if we were to add 3, then what happens? Instead of 2, now I want to bring in one more risky asset and total say there are 3 risky assets. Then you write this as W3, expected return of 3. Okay, and this becomes plus W1 square, sorry, W3 square, sigma 3 square. Okay, this I'm just continuing this way, plus 2 W2 W3 sigma 2 3 plus 2 W1 W3 sigma 1 3. This is what you do. So you have variances on one side and you have covariances on another side. This sigma 1 2 sigma 2 3 sigma 1 3, all these are called as covariances. If you have 3 risky assets, you will have 3 variances and covariances. And if you have 3 risky assets, you'll have 3C2 because 1 2 2 3 1 3 combinations. This is written as 3 factorial by 2 factorial into 3 minus 2, which is 1 factorial. 3 into 2 factorial by 2 factorial into 1 factorial is anyways 1. These two get cancelled, you get 3. So you have 1, 2, and 3. Okay. If you have 10 risky assets, just as an example, if you have 10 risky assets, then you write this as, I mean, you'll have sigma 1 square, sigma 2 square, sigma 3 square. In that way, you'll have 10. And when it comes to covariances, you write it as, if you have 10 risky assets, you write it as 10C2, which is 10 factorial by 2 factorial into 10 minus 2 is 8 factorial. So 10 into 9 into 8 factorial by 2 factorial into 8 factorial. These two get cancelled. 2 5s 10. So you get 45. So 45 plus 10. Total there will be 55 items. Representing it in this way, if I have 10, putting all 10 will be too complicated. Hence, this can be reduced significantly. How? Let's take an example of 2 only, and then I'm going to write a matrix, algebra representation, so that it will be easier for us to handle the values. Let me put it in a matrix format, algebra, matrix algebra. And if you have a 2 asset case, you write mu, which is equal to mu1 and mu2, which is expected return of 1 and expected return of 2. This is of size 2 by 1, means 2 rows, 1 column. If I have n assets, this becomes n by 1. N rows, 1 column. Simple. Then you have sigma matrix. Here you have sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 1 square, sigma 2. And sigma 1, 2 or sigma 2, 1 both would be the same. Sigma 1, 2. Sigma 1, 2 equal to sigma 2, 1. Just remember that. This is a 2 by 2 matrix. Either you want to find the correlation between TCS and Infosys, or Infosys and TCS, doesn't matter. They both give the same thing. So this becomes a 2 by 2. If you have n assets, n risky assets, then this becomes n by n. And alongside you also have weights. Weight matrix. You have only W1 and W2. This is 2 by 1. 2 rows, 1 column. This can be written as n by 1 as well. Now, if you write this as expected return of the portfolio, then you say weight matrix multiplied by this. That means weight matrix is W1, W2, and then you take a transpose, sorry. So you get W1, W2. When you take a transpose, the columns become rows into this mu1, mu2. This is of dimension 1 by 2. This is of dimension 2 by 1. And then you get expected return of the portfolio as W1 mu1 plus W2 mu2. This is the expected return of the portfolio. Okay. So if you have n assets, this will go on plus one, so on and so forth. It will go on. This is for expected return. Okay. Now, what about variance? Variance will be W transpose into sigma into W. W transpose means W1, W2. Sigma matrix is given here. Sigma 1 squared, sigma 1, 2, sigma 2, 1, sigma 2 into W means W1, W2. So this is of dimension 1 by 2. This is of dimension 2 by 2. This is of dimension 2 by 1. Now, when you multiply all these things and solve, do you know what you'll get? W1 squared sigma 1 squared plus W2 squared sigma 2 squared plus 2 times of W1 W2 sigma 1. Same thing you get when you multiply this matrix. Same thing you get when you multiply. So the point that I'm trying to drive is if you have n number of assets, it is going to be very difficult to write lengthy equations. Hence, we represent it in matrix format using mu matrix, expected return matrix, risk matrix, sigma matrix, and weight matrix. If you have these three matrices, then you can handle n number of things. So I shall stop here, and tomorrow when we connect, we will take the discussion to the next level on how do I combine all these risky assets into a single portfolio, and from there, we will take it to the next level. So I will stop here, friends, and tomorrow when we connect, I think. Friends, by the way, I need to also tell you that tomorrow will be the last class because I have decided that we will have only 5 sessions. Okay. So tomorrow I'll explain about these things and then we can conclude. Thank you all so much once again for your patience. Thank you all, friends.